to all of you. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Joining me today is a first time guest to the channel. He is the writer, director, creator, showrunner for the police drama Vindication. If you haven't watched it, it's more than past time that you get on board. Please join me in welcoming Jarod O'Flaherty.
I hear lots of applause. I hear lots of cheering right now.
You just can hear it resonating in your mind,
Yeah,
right?
it's
All
got
this
to be there.
jubilation of outbursts for you. Jared and I actually met, I guess, about 3 years ago now, maybe, in Orlando at the International Christian Visual Media Conference and Festival. And at that time, I had heard of Vindication. I had not seen it, but after we got to talking, I went home and binge watched both the seasons that were out at the time. And then we've kind of stayed in touch since then. And we'll talk more about Vindication as we get going. But real quick, Jared, where can people find Vindication? Where can they watch it?
Yeah, so if you go to vindicationseries.com, we have a list of about the 8 or 9 places that you can watch the seasons that are out there. YouTube is the easiest place for the first 2 seasons, so we let people get a taste of it just by hopping on YouTube. Everybody's got access to that. And then the later seasons, once you've watched and enjoy it, there are different places you can go. Redeem TV is our primary partner. They're a streaming app that is donor supported, so you can get on and watch there. Our latest season, season 4, which I think we may talk about a little bit today, it is available on Redeem TV for donors, and then it's also with Angel Studios, who have come on board as a partner to distribute the series. So excited to be there as well.
Very cool, very cool. And I have seen all four. Well, on Redeem TV, I'm currently watching season 4. So I've seen all the episodes that have been released up to this point.
Yeah.
Genuinely love the show myself. We'll talk more about it as we get going. But Jared, when you were growing up, like as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, it changed throughout my lifetime, like it did for many. I think around first grade, I wanted to be a pilot. When I got into like middle school, I think I wanted to be an attorney. Once I got into like my later high school years, I just wanted to be in a cubicle somewhere so I could do my time and then go enjoy life on the evenings and weekends. So, and there's probably 20 other things sprinkled in. So can't say that I ever had one that was particularly my focus. Like this is what I want to be when I grow up.
Okay, that's an interesting shift from your middle school to high school years. You go from wanting to get dressed up and stand in front of a crowd and essentially, this is simplifying what an attorney does, but essentially out argue people to your payday to being like, nope, just want to sit in the cubicle and hopefully nobody notices that I'm here. That's a dynamic shift there.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll say what happened. I did become a Christian between 1 and 2, so maybe that had an impact on what my priorities were. The attorney thing was thinking, money, attorneys are rich, and I get to argue with people. So yeah, but I ended up doing different things when I graduated out of high school. I didn't go to college. I just went straight into the workforce, doing IT and technical stuff, which afforded me some great opportunities. So that's the route that I ended up going.
Okay, okay. So not quite being in a cubicle, but a little more so than being an attorney, I guess, with
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, for
information
sure.
technology. My
Yep.
producing partner, Chris Black, has done a lot of IT work. That's what he does for a living as well. So when you graduated high school, you were getting into IT work. What did you imagine your life would look like? Did you just think, okay, I'm doing information technology and this is it. I'm locked in. Never got to look for another job.
Yeah, so it was at the birth of the internet age, right around that time. It'd been around for about 4 or 5 years, but was just booming, the World Wide Web boom of the early 2000s. So I was kind of wanting to ride that wave. I'd heard about opportunities where people, got real skilled with a certain technology and made a very good living. And so that kind of became my goal as I'd like to get in with some of that technology. I enjoyed computers. I enjoyed the internet stuff that was happening, and so I wanted to get in with that, and then spend the rest of my time with family, and have a family, have children, have a wife, those sort of things. That's what my priority became at that time.
Okay. So literally no thought that you'd be doing some of what you're doing now. Yeah, as an 18, 19-year old.
Nothing. Yeah. In high school, I never took media tech. I never took theater. I never did any of that type of stuff. And even coming out of high school, I didn't do anything in that. It was something that I enjoyed. So my graduation gift from my parents was a nice laptop that had the ability to do some digital editing, which was at the time a new
Okay.
thing. And about a year into, after honestly about 6 months after graduating, I bought a digital camera and started shooting things and editing them together with music. And I was able to show them at my church. It would be youth events or summer camp or whatnot. I would film them, edit it together. And that was really my start into it. And I enjoyed it. It was never for pay. It was just like a fun thing to do, to create something, tell a story, and then have an audience.
Hmm.
So the stories I would tell were what happened over this weekend of this youth event or what happened at
Right.
youth camp. That was the story that would be told, but I would just be capturing it, not directing it or putting it together. And it was just a fun thing. And every time I did one, I wanted the next one to be better. I wanted people to be more
Mm.
impressed. Like, oh wow, that was really good. How did you do that? That was better than your last one. And that's kind of what motivated me. So editing was definitely my foundation for the filmmaking work I do now.
And little did you know that was an early training ground for what you're doing now. Like you said, you were doing it just because you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I did it for about 10 years just in that mold. So I run
Mm.
into people sometimes that, man, hey, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to do what you're doing. And I'm like, well, it took me 10 years to get even the first opportunity that I've had. And that was 10 years of doing the editing and all the other stuff. So once you put in that time, then it's like, okay, let's talk.
Right. Well, and it's funny that you say that because that the editing and technical stuff is not my passion or my strength. I'm more into writing dialogue and storytelling from that aspect and also acting, but it's the same thing. People tell me sometimes, oh, I'd like to get into acting, I'd like to do this. Like, well, let me tell you a little bit about my journey and kind of the amount of time and the things I've experienced, because I always tell people it's substantially more fun than most people realize, but it's also a substantial more amount of work than most people realize. And like you, when I was in high school, people told me frequently, "Oh man, this is not my words. This is what people told me." But like, man, you're the funniest person I've ever met. You should be a comedian. You should be doing movies. And I didn't do theater in high school. I gave no thought to that kind of stuff. I had no idea like what God had in store for me years later. And you already mentioned that you became a Christian sometime between middle school and high school. So take some time and tell us about when you accepted Jesus as your Savior, about how old you were, and kind of what those circumstances were that led to that.
Yeah, so I was 16 years old, and we say accepted Jesus as your savior. When I was a child, I grew up going to church, and I did make a profession of faith as a young kid. I was probably about 6 or 7. Got baptized
Mm.
afterwards, and I always have believed that even in my teenage years, when I did kind of fall away and start chasing the things of the world, that I was still what we would call saved. Okay. And that's because
Okay.
I definitely had the belief in my heart. My trust and faith was in him, even though everything about my lifestyle was going in an opposite direction. Now, whether or not that's accurate or true, I don't know, but that's just the way I've always felt. In my worst times as a teenager, had you asked me about my faith, I would have professed Jesus. So you
Okay.
have that. But what I always look to as my time of coming to know Christ was during that season as a teenager when I truly learned what it meant to surrender and to follow. And so it was, yeah, it was my junior year of high school. And I kind of reached a low point because of some circumstances, and God reached out to me. He found me in a place and said, hey, I'm still here. And he kind of instructed me on an act of obedience of something that I needed to do. And at that time of my life, it didn't make any sense for me to do it, but I did. And he changed everything. And that moment I can look back to, and that was a pivotal moment that changed the trajectory of my life. And so yeah, I said I wanted to be an attorney. That was probably like my sophomore year of high school. Even I was in debate class. I remember a lot about that was me going on that route. And then afterwards, just the purpose, the making a lot of money or any of those sort of things didn't seem to matter nearly as much.
Mm. It's honestly amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us, by the way. But isn't it amazing how sometimes God just changes our perspective in a way that completely changes the way we look at the life around us? Like we think we've got things figured out. We think we know what's best for us. And sometimes he just reveals things to us in a way to where we go, you know what? The world just looks different to me now. Like things that were important aren't, and things that weren't suddenly are.
Yeah, I said I was 16, and how much life experience can you have as a 16-year-old? But I was at a time that I had gone after and chased and was getting the things that I thought led to happiness that the world tells you would be happiness. Now, you as an adult may look back and go, that wasn't that big of a deal, but it was getting the car that I wanted. It was being in these relationships and all these other sort of things that were happening, and yet I found myself more empty and more hopeless than I had ever been. So when he got a hold of me, and I realized, oh, those aren't the things that actually lead to happiness. And how many adults, how many people, 50s, 60s, 40s, whatever, are still chasing those things, thinking that's what leads to happiness. And
Yeah.
all it ever does is you need more and more and more of it. It's never satisfying. So anyway, the verse though, the from Matthew 6:19 through 21 about do not store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal, but instead store up for yourself, store up for yourself treasures in heaven where those
Yeah.
things don't happen to it. And then the last part of that says, for where your treasure is, where your heart is, there your treasure will be. All where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Anyway, man, I
It's
think I would remember it, but that was impactful to me at the time because man, I was living and experiencing that. So yeah, definitely that changed my view on those things.
and what you just said, and you kind of touched on it, but so many of us spend our whole lives never quite figuring that out. So many of us spend our whole lives trying to fill a void that truly only the Holy Spirit can fill. But we spend our lives trying to fill it with the things that society has geared us to believe will bring us happiness or success. We look at success on a worldly level. We look at success by what everybody else tells us it should be, right? And we try to fill ourselves with that. And like you said, you just want more because nothing satisfies it. It's almost like when Jesus was talking to that Samaritan woman and he said, you drink this water, you'll be thirsty again. I can give you living water. She didn't know what he meant, but the living water we know is the Holy Spirit. Because you're going to, no matter what else you try to fill yourself with, you're going to thirst again because nothing else will satisfy us that way.
Yep. That's the way it works. It's like with addictions, you just always need more and more and more to keep going because it never is satisfying. And there are a lot of things in this
Mhm.
world, whether it be success or finances or luxuries or whatever, that will never completely satisfy. Instead, they become hungrier and you need more and more of them.
Yeah, and your life just starts to careen out of control at that point. Now you talked about you're spending the 10 years doing IT work and you love the editing, but you didn't necessarily envision transitioning into filmmaking. So what was it that brought that shift to where you looked at the background you had and the foundation you had and said, you know what, why don't I create a motion picture?
Yeah, for me, it was the advances that happened in technology around 2008 to 2012. DSLR cameras, for people that are familiar with those, they put in the hands of amateurs and or beginners. They put tools in their hands that looked like the cinematic quality that prior to then was only seen in theaters from the big studios. And so that's what really got the gears turning in my head is like, man, I've got these tools available to me now, whether it's the camera, the lens, the editing software, the platforms that allow us to create something that looks close to Hollywood or closer to Hollywood than it's ever been in the past. And so with that, I just kind of took some baby steps. Instead of filming live events, I'm now doing some things in the narrative space with music videos, with short films, and then eventually a feature film, and from there, the series that I work on now.
Okay. And then what was it, or was there one certain thing that inspired you to specifically write Vindication?
Goodness. Vindication started. My wife, she watched more television than I did, and one night she was watching a crime drama series, and I just kind of glanced up at the TV to see what was happening and said, they always tell these things where you see the crime and then they spend the episode solving it. I'm like, well, imagine if you did one from a storytelling perspective where you didn't know what the crime was either. So you're following the
They
investigation, and not only are you trying to figure out who done it, but you're also wondering what exactly happened.
do.
Yeah, and so that was the premise for our first what became the short film Vindication, but was also our pilot episode is you're following the investigation and you don't know what happened, much less who did it.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I never had heard you say that before. So, what were some of your favorite? You said your wife watches more TV than you do.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite like movies and TV series? Were you always a fan of like the police drama?
Not really. No, I can't even tell you one that I've ever watched more than one or two episodes of them. I just don't watch
Wow,
those. So for me,
that's interesting.
it was a single short film. Like, yeah, I can do one of these, and I didn't want to watch anything because I didn't want their ideas to bleed over into something that I was doing
Right.
originally. So there was one called Cold Case that I want to say maybe I watched 3 or 4 episodes of it
Yeah.
once and enjoyed it just because it had a history's perspective. They would put you in these certain time periods, and I enjoyed that piece of it. So, probably the show that influenced me was Friday Night Lights, the Texas-based football series about high school football.
Oh yeah.
They did about 5 seasons, was very well received, and even still now people look back that it was a very well done series. And so
Did
that would be
like
the
the show
one.
a
Yeah,
lot.
that would be the one that probably influenced me the most as far as
Okay.
my approach to
And I got my
storytelling.
Texas Forever
Yeah, I
shirt
saw
on.
it as soon as
Didn't even
you. I'm
know we were
like,
going to talk about that today, but if you know the show, you know Tim Riggins. That's something he would say
that's his
from
phrase.
time to
Yep,
time. So,
yep.
and so when you did the short film that now became the pilot episode of Vindication, where did you envision it going from there? Did you at what point did you go, oh, I can make a series off of this?
No, I did not have that foresight. To me, it was
Mm,
just a short film. It was over with after the first one, and then through our distributor, I was approached about, hey, would you want to do another one of these? It's performing really well. People like it. They
mhm.
have asked, is there more to this? And I'm like, well, what are you talking
What's
about?
next?
It's over with. And they go, well, what about the detective? Could he do another case? So when I did what at the time we called Vindication 2, it's a story that is loosely based on my own testimony as a teenager. It's about two high school students, and they're in a relationship, and uh, I just kind of poured elements from my own testimony into that to create this story, and had a little mystery and suspense element to it as far as the detective case. So that again, that was the extent of my vision was like, well, if I get to do one more, let me at least put my testimony on screen. And
Yeah.
after that, the same thing happened. Hey, what about another episode? And then I thought, okay, hold on now. This is if these start, streaming together, I need to build it into a series. So
Building
you have
cohesiveness. Yeah.
yeah, recurring characters and some storylines and threads that continue throughout. So you really see in episodes 3 and 4 of season one the approach change, where you now meet some of these other characters and there's ongoing storylines and growth
Yeah.
and those sort of things. And honestly, looking back, it hurts us because when people hear, oh, you got to check out Vindication, like you did at the top of your show, they go back and watch the first 1 or 2 episodes, which were not intended to be a series. And
Right.
maybe they don't get hooked as much. They don't, well, do I like
Yeah.
this?
Because other than Detective Gary Travis, there's not much that relates those that connects those stories. That is a good point.
Yeah. And so I wonder how many people don't make it past those first 2 episodes. And they're like,
If
yeah, I
you're
don't know.
watching and you think you're not going to make it past the first 2 episodes, keep going because it's worth it. Just keep going.
Yeah, yeah. Once people get to like episode 4, 5, and 6 of the first season, that's when they're like, "Oh, I'm hooked now, and I got to keep binge watching."
Yeah.
And then I can understand now why there's 4 seasons. But on
Mhm.
one of the streaming, or I mentioned earlier, on Angel, you can actually see how many people are watching, and I always go on there, and there's tons of people watching the first episode, and I'm going, man, this was our rookie project. Was not meant to be a series. It's good. Everybody says, yeah, it's a good watch. It's good for a short film. It did really well in festivals, and it allowed us to continue making, but
Right.
content. But it again, it doesn't have the hook and the storytelling elements that we now incorporate in some of the later seasons.
Right. Well, because you've, like we said, you've built around all of that, and so you're actually like building something and building pieces onto it. The cast in Vindication, I will say, and I don't want to. We could spend an hour just talking about Vindication easily, but I will say, man, the cast is so good. And when I saw that first episode, I knew Ben Davies because I'd seen him in the feature film Courageous and I'm Not Ashamed, and I think maybe at least one other thing. I did not know Todd Terry. Actually, I had seen him once, but didn't make the connection at first. He was in a low budget film called Beyond the Farthest Star, which I saw a screening of and actually met him afterwards. If you were to ask him now, he'd be like, I don't know who Jared Johnson is. It was a very brief. I just saw him in the lobby and I recognized him because I just seen him on screen. I just walked up, shook his hand, hey man, good work, good to meet you. And that was it. But when I watched Vindication, I did not realize that was the same guy till I started looking at his filmography.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that, I have seen him. And then the second episode had Maisie McLean, who was in I'm Not Ashamed, and she was so good in that movie. I was a big fan of hers immediately. So when I saw her, I was like, oh, that's awesome. I haven't seen her in much else. And then, gosh, as you've built along, ML Roberts is great. Peggy Shot, TC Stallings. Like, I'm a big fan of a lot of these people. Cameron Arnett came a lot. Like, as I keep watching it, I'm like, you're building so much with that cast, and everybody fits into even though some of them I didn't know about before. I'm like, they fit in that story that you're building really well. So I will say, in my opinion, 80 to 90% of being a good director is casting the right people.
Yeah.
So congratulations to you on that. I think it is extremely well cast. I think everybody plays their roles extremely well.
You hear a lot about independent projects, low budget projects, or faith based projects that they always have bad acting, you know? And
That is kind of the stigma,
you
yeah.
hear that, and with Vindication, I feel like we have, like you said, have had a really strong cast. Bad acting is never anything that, I mean, I've had maybe one or two comments come in that said bad acting, but you can tell real quickly the person's motives aren't against the film or the acting; it's against Christianity in general. This has terrible acting in it. And
You want to find something insulting to say.
yeah,
So,
you worship a make believe fairy in the sky, and you're like, okay, I don't think this is about the acting. I think this is about
right.
something else. So, anyway, but so yeah, the acting has just been really strong throughout, and it is the casting. You hit the nail on the head. That's one thing I'm really proud about. I've written episodes. I don't go around saying I'm a great writer. I've directed. I don't say I'm a great director, editing, any of those things. But I'm like, I think I'm really good at casting. Like, I think we have put together a really strong cast. So if I've got a strength, that's what it is finding the right people. Um,
Yeah.
and plugging them in so that they do the heavy lifting. It's crazy. You would think with the amount that we have filmed for these 4 seasons and a special that we just worked on, that I would have stories of these times that actors showed up and didn't know their lines, or we had to shoot it 50 times in a row because we could never get it right. And I've never had that. They always show up, know the lines. Usually, if I haven't looked at the script in a while because I'm so busy doing other producer
Right.
tasks, I just show up and they know it so well. And we've had hundreds of people, and they just always show up, know the script or know the material, and do a great job with it. So I don't have any stories of people that showed up and just
You
could
mean
not
to
act.
tell me Cameron Arnett's never wasted half a day of shooting from not knowing his lines? Come on. I'm,
Nope, nope, nope.
I'm kidding. Cameron Arnett's great.
Yeah, no, he does
Yeah,
fabulous.
he's great. Like I said, the casting on that show, uh, everybody, even like I said, like Daquan Ryan and Venus Monique. I had never seen her before. I can't believe it took me this long to mention her. My apologies, Venus Monique. She's one of the best on that whole series, and I did not know she existed until whatever episode she popped up. And within a couple episodes, I was like, my gosh, this woman is one of the best on that show.
Yeah, she's we've thrown some tough moments at her too. The one
Yes.
where she finds her brother, I'll just say that in season two. I still
Yes.
to this day, even having edited it, have only watched that maybe 4 or 5 times because
Mm,
it is so traumatizing. It just what she
yeah.
did, it felt real, and so she's had multiple moments thrown at her where she's done a great job.
Venus knocks it out of the park. Like she is the vulnerability you just talked about, but then she also has some intense moments. I don't mean like going crazy, but just this powerful intensity that you can see in her eyes and just the way she carries that character. She's great. Todd
Remember,
Terry, like I said,
yeah,
I'm
remember in
sorry, go
season
ahead.
two when Hannah confronts her in the hallway and starts like pushing her and stuff
Yes.
and saying like,
She
"You want to?"
twists her arm. She's like, "You gotta stop. You need to back off." That's some of what I'm talking about. She's
Yeah,
just like got these moments where she can just turn it on, and that she really makes that character, because that character I'm sure is interesting on paper, but this goes back to the casting. If you get someone, a lesser actress or a less connected actress than Venus Monique, that character's okay. But with her in her hands, that's a great character.
yeah, yeah, no doubt.
And then, like I said, Todd Terry, I had only seen him in one movie and didn't make the connection, but especially as I followed the show, his character arc from a writing perspective, I've really enjoyed. And then, yeah, Todd just, he embodies that character so well too. And just, you just really want to root for him no matter what he's doing the more you watch the show. And a lot of that's the writing, but a lot of it too is just Todd Terry becoming Detective Travis.
Oh yeah, yeah. A moment with
So,
him as far as being an actor that I think of is at the end of season two when he goes to the jail to visit his mother. You know that he's
yeah,
been fighting it the whole season. He doesn't want to do it. He finally does.
didn't
He
want to
goes.
see her.
Yeah, he didn't want to. So he finally does it. We get the cameras all set up. We shoot the very first take of it. It was so good that I, as a director, went in and I'm like, I feel like we need to shoot this again. Like we're supposed to like do more than one, but and our boom op at the time is like wiping tears away, and Lori Coker, who played
Wow.
his mom, she's shaken up and all, and we're just like, yeah, we're supposed to keep going. I don't know why we need another one because that was everything. And
Your
Todd,
instinct tells you that you want some safety coverage, but then you're
yeah,
going, we
but
can,
I don't
how
have
do
any
we improve
notes.
on what
I
we
don't,
just did?
if everybody's looking like, okay, what do we need to fix? And I'm like, I don't think we fix anything. And it was just so surprising because sometimes actors they've got to warm up, they've got to do a couple of
Oh,
takes
yeah.
until they get there. And the first one is too dry or it's too emotional, and those and
They're kind of
and
finding the
yeah,
scene.
they're
Yeah.
finding it. And man, he just hit that first one, and it was so good. And it wasn't like sometimes on set, if we have an emotional scene, we'll say, okay, everybody needs to be quiet. We're all gonna be very
Yeah.
reverent, treat this like you're in a funeral or whatnot. We're all gonna be somber, let the actor get where they need to go, and the actor will go off in another room and say, give me 5 minutes, or they'll,
Yeah.
and Todd just sat in the chair and did that and cut. And he's like, okay, was that any good? And was that any good? Like, how did you do that? It was fabulous.
I love that he had to ask, was it any good? Like he's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
yeah, Jared, was that okay?
Don't
Like, what
quote
we
me
would
on
we
that, but
do?
I don't. But that was the attitude. He had this
Yeah.
emotional outpouring, and then cut. Okay, all right. It wasn't that he had to stay there or push himself to get to that moment. So
Yeah, the dynamics between he and ML Roberts, who plays his daughter, is one that to me is one of the better aspects of the show because there's this deep love, but there's also this constant. We don't really get each other as much as we want to, and
mhm.
there's their dynamics and the way they. Like I said, she's a very good actress. I haven't seen her in too much outside of I'm Not Ashamed, which again, her and Maisie, when I first saw that movie, I was like, I hope these young ladies get more opportunity because I thought they were both great in that film.
Mhm.
I think her Emma L plays so well off of Todd Terry and Peggy Shot, and probably to me the best moment so far in the series. And I don't want to give too much away to the audience, but it was. I think it was near the end of season two, and it's Todd Terry and ML Roberts watching behind or watching on video watching another character confess something. That's you know what I'm talking about. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah. It was
give
the
away too
finale of
much.
season one. It was the
Was
final
that the
episode
finale
of season
season
one.
one?
Yep, yep.
Okay, okay. That moment of them two sitting and watching and the love you felt between them in that moment,
Hmm.
I think so far that's still my favorite moment of the series.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone
Just
point that one out, but it was really good. What's crazy is the first time we shot that, we get to the end and Emma just nailed it, and it was, the emotion, and they hugged and everything was there. We realized either the card was full or the camera didn't roll, so we did not have it. And it was like,
oh,
oh no. So I had to go in there and be like, Emma, can you do that again? And what you see in the final edit is her doing it a second time
oh
after
wow.
really pouring it out. If you talk about her acting in that same season, it was 2 episodes earlier, episode 8 at the very end. It's when she had shared with her parents that she's pregnant and she was going to the
Mhm.
doctor to get a checkup, and the doctor confirmed that everything was healthy with the baby. And Todd's character, Travis, asks her, like, very hesitantly, "Are we ever going to meet the father? Or what's the situation there?" And when he asks her and she doesn't answer, and he stands
Yeah.
up and looks her in the face, and he can tell something is terribly wrong in that situation. And
Yes,
so if you remember the scene I'm talking about, that was a very powerful one as
I do.
well at the end of episode 8. And yeah, she did a great job on that one.
Yeah, they both of them. And then I'll just real quickly say TC Stallings' character goes by Trey, but Gilbert Millwood III is one of the greatest names ever. When Gary Travis reads that in the applicants, he's going through, he's like, Gilbert Millwood III. Do we have any real applicants? And then you see him come in, and that to me, I just was like, I don't know how much of the audience remembers that that's his name because you only
Yeah.
hear it like twice, maybe. But I was like, that's a really cool name that's intended to not sound cool. But I love that name.
In season 4, which I think the episode has come out, maybe it hasn't. His
Or his
wife
wife.
his wife calls him
Yes.
by that name.
She says Gilbert Andrew Millwood III. And I was like, yep, there's his name again.
Yeah, Gilbert,
I
yeah.
just watched that episode this week, actually.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember if it had come out yet, but yeah, she calls him by that. So
Yeah, yeah. And what's her name? Sharon Lanier?
Sharon Lanier, yes.
Sharon Lanier. Okay, I've seen her in a couple of other things, but I don't know her real well. But when I saw her, I was like, okay, I kind of know who she is
Hmm,
too.
hmm.
So yeah,
Very gifted.
very good. Like I said, everybody in that cast. One Andrew Cheney I hadn't mentioned yet, also very good. Like literally, yeah. I'm gonna stop talking about how good the casting is because we could go on for an hour about that too. But
Yeah, the finale of season 3, I'll just say that they're in a church for something for Chris. Man, we
oh
had
yeah,
we had ML Roberts there, we had TC Stallings was there, Brett Varvel was there.
he's also
Um,
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great. You have Todd, you had Venus, Andrew Cheney was there as well. And I'm like, oh my goodness, look at the collection of
Hmm.
gifted and people that they've all done starring lead roles in different
Oh yeah,
films and projects, right? Where they are, and we've got them all
where
here
they're carrying
together.
their own project. Every one of them that you named have done that.
They are, yeah, they are featured high,
They're all
leads.
headliners.
They're
Yeah.
leads in all their and here we had them all together for Vindication for this scene, and so that was really neat.
That's how much they love that material, or they wouldn't all be there. I mean, that's just all there is to it. That speaks a lot to what God has helped you to build. Because yeah, they wouldn't all be in one place like that if they didn't want to be there.
I won't say who it was, but one of the people who was there for that scene, actually two or three of them, they did not have any other filming in that block that we were shooting at that time. We just had that one scene. And in
Hmm.
my mind, I thought, man, it would make sense for them to be there, but financially, to pay for travel, day rate, all that type of stuff, to get them there just to be a part of that scene where they don't have any lines, all they are is just watching what's taking place. I'm like, financially, it doesn't make sense. And so several of them I reached out to and I said, I think it would be really cool for your character to be here, but we don't have the finances to make it happen.
Yeah.
And they responded and said, I think my character should be there too. Let's make it happen, whatever that means. And so they
Wow.
they were there. It wasn't totally like we were able to come up with some funds, but definitely not what
What
they
you
are
would normally,
what they
yeah.
are deserving of for them to be there. We'll say that. And so, but that's you said how much they believe in the show, and that happened for that scene, for a few of them to be there and to be a part of it.
Wow. And I'll ask you this because I'm sure what I'm about to say probably does happen sometimes. We all know that when we're making noise for the kingdom of God, we have an enemy who doesn't like that very much. Uh, have you felt things like obstacles popping up or challenges throughout your 4 seasons of filming where you're like, okay, the enemy's trying to stop this. He's trying to throw wrenches into what we're doing here.
Yeah, definitely. I even keep a list usually after we do a shoot of all the things that popped up to get in the way, just to
Mm.
remember. Because guess what? It still got done. God provided a way, and a lot of times we
Amen.
held back those things. So I keep a list of it. It's like my testimony list of these things that happened on all these different days.
Right.
I can't say there are any huge ones, any giant. Like there was one time that was pretty big, but it ended up working out better in the long run,
Mm.
of what that thing was. But the small ones definitely come up almost on a daily basis. One that I like to share about was early in season two, episode 1 or 2. We were filming. I think it was episode 1 of season 2. We were filming, and we were at a location that we use for our police station, but it was also being used on the weekends by a church. They were holding church services in this venue. We are using it for our police station. We had booked it, we had paid. It was our location for the day.
Hmm.
But I see some cars start showing up in the parking lot, and I'm filming a scene, but I can see in the distance some people not looking happy that we are there. And
Mm.
our associate producer at the time kind of came over and pulled me aside and said, well, this church, they were supposed to have their, women's group or their prayer meeting today here at this location. They had it booked also, and we're there filming. And so in the moment, it's again, it's not a huge thing, but it's an issue that these people are showing up. They're upset that we're there filming. We've still got
Right.
4 or 5 hours left to go that we need to film. Well, by the end of it, this person who had arrived that was upset, she's praying with our co-producer. They've got hands on each other and in the air, and they're praying together, and they're happy, and she's excited about the show and wanting to see it and all those sort of
Oh,
things. So
wow.
it was a situation that turned like, hey, this could be a problem, and it turned into a really good thing in the end. And I've got lists and lists of probably hundreds of those type of situations that have come up throughout filming.
Man. That just speaks to the fact that we serve a God that knows no boundaries.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
things that we put limitations on, things that we think are impossible. I tell people sometimes the things that we look at as being impossible, God doesn't even flinch. Like there's nothing that's a problem to him. Like obviously there's sin in this world because we're sinful. So there's a lot of problems around the world. There's nothing that's really a problem for God. I think even those of us that have been in the faith a long time. I got saved when I was 7 years old. Sometimes we still overlook that because we're limited by our own limitations, right? We can, and I think we sometimes forget the fact that not only can we trust God with everything, literally nothing's a problem for Him. He doesn't always do everything that we want, right?
yeah.
It's things are in His will, but when He wants to solve something, it doesn't even take effort. He's like literally, we serve a God with no boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I've seen that so many times with the Vindication that there is something coming up and it's like, I always know he can. I don't think it's beyond his limit. I know
Right,
he can. I don't know if he will, though, right?
right,
So,
right.
I mean, there are times that we're got to film the next day. Cast members have flown in from out of town. They're going to fly out the next day. We have one day to film that all these different schedules line up at this location. The location is the only day they're closed. So there's no rescheduling it or changing it.
Everything has to happen on that day.
Everything has to happen that lines up there. And you look at the forecast, and it's supposed to be Dallas Fort Worth is frozen over that day. Everything's shutting down, or it's 100% chance of rain, and we're outside all day. And that there's just these different things that you go, there's no way we can do this because of those. But I know he can, but I don't know if he will. You wake up the next day. wait a second, it's supposed to be raining right now. I see clouds, but there's no rain coming down, or streets are supposed to be frozen, but I'm looking out there and cars are driving around and it looks clear. So, and we have had that many times. I'm telling to the
Mm.
very brink of we have to shut down, we can't film today, and yet it was able to go on. And then the next day, boom, that we're off. The next day, it is like impossible. It's like
Yeah,
if this had just been scheduled one day later, we are shut down, and this shoot is collapsing. But every single
going from
time,
the brink of panic to going everything's perfect, everything's fine is
yeah,
such a shift in our emotional makeup. Yeah.
yep. And I mean, the prayers happen. It's like I know you can. I'm hoping you will. I'm asking you to do it, and I can say for 4 seasons of Vindication, I don't have a single example of a time that he did not when it was needed.
Wow. That's how you know you're glorifying him too, because sometimes, and I'm assuming you'll agree, sometimes we get these ideas and we think, oh, this is what I should be doing. God's going to be happy with this. And we get busy doing things that are good, but they may not be specifically his will. And so they don't, when we go too much with our own momentum or whatever, sometimes they just don't turn out as great as they could be because our entire focus wasn't on God, show me if this is what you want me to do. Like, you're not doing anything wrong necessarily, but you're also not completely devoting it to His will. And sometimes I think maybe we learn some lessons
Right.
through things like that. But what you're telling me sounds like what y'all are doing is lining up with His will for all these things to just happen to keep lining up the right way.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, mathematically, it's like there's no way that we could do this much without something having come up that knocks things off. It defies logic and numbers.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So we've got 4 seasons of Vindication. Uh, Whatever you're comfortable sharing, because I know none of us like to tell the whole world everything that we have planned, right?
Yeah.
But do you have plan? What are you willing to tell us about the future of Vindication? And then, are you interested in maybe branching into feature films at some point? Do you have another series in mind? What are you willing to kind of tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the 4 seasons are done and they're coming out by May 8th. All 4 seasons will be out. We have already shot another piece of the Vindication story, calling it kind of a special episode. It might end up being a feature length, 80, 90 minutes long. I don't know yet until it's edited together, but we've already filmed it all. And so it's the next chapter in Vindication. Chronologically, it takes place after season 4, so it's what would happen next. But
Okay.
it's not a full season. It's the equivalent of 2 to 3 episodes, all condensed into one story. I'd like
Mm,
to think it's some of our best storytelling, some of our best filmmaking that we have done to date. Just because you grow and you get better and you learn and those sort of things. So we've got that will definitely be happening. As soon as you and I are done, I'll back in the editing bay to work on that. So that is
okay.
definitely coming and is exciting, and will give people who enjoy Vindication one more thing to look forward to. People have started to ask, is there a season 5? What's happening with that? Certainly, I think there are more stories to be told. We've got some road bumps in the way that could prevent it. I would just say that I don't think we can continue doing things the way we have of seasons 1 through 4, where it's very economical, low budget. We're filming in people's living rooms and backyards and, in our church's property and all those sort of things. I think Vindication has reached the point where it needs to take the next step forward. But
Mm,
we're not talking about Netflix and Amazon level, but we need to get up to what for others is their minimum. And so we'll see how that works. So it's not that we can just keep doing what has happened with Vindication to get it to this point, but there are a lot of interested parties. There's a fan base out there, and so that certainly could open itself up to another season of the show, and we would hope the best one yet. With the best budget, the best cast, all those sort of things. To make Vindication season 5 the best thing we have ever done. So it's certainly out there.
mm,
And then lastly, for me personally, with everything that I have learned from doing Vindication, I shared with you how it started as just this idea for a short film. I'm not a crime drama fan. I have looked and said, if I could go back and start fresh, clean slate, and do something I'm passionate about, and be able to start from the beginning with exactly what I want to do, I've come up with a series, a concept, a pilot, a pitch for that. That man, when I go back and look at, it, I'm like, this is so good. Like people, oh, Vindication's really good. I'm like, no, no, you don't even have a clue until you see what I'm working on next. Because
Mm.
I look at Vindication sometimes and it's kind of like, man, where'd that come from? We just threw that together. It just kind of happened. This other one is one that I'm like, oh, this is really good storytelling. This is really good writing and rich, deep characters and all those things. So it's, if it happens, it's a start over fresh, but with something I'm passionate about and taking everything that has been learned with the Vindication and applying it to something new.
Very cool, very cool. I'm intrigued. We'll leave it at
Yeah,
that for
yeah,
now.
yeah.
But yeah, you got me interested for sure. And the crime drama, police dramas are not necessarily my absolute favorites, but there's some that I've been a big fan of. Columbo, I was always a huge fan of. I could still watch to this day. And then NYPD Blue, I thought was very good. 24, which is about government and terrorism. It's not quite the same, but I was a big fan of that.
Hmm.
Criminal Minds is FBI chasing serial killers, but I like all those shows. So that was part of what when I started watching Vindication, I was like, it has some similar elements, but as a Christian, I was like, kind of like you said earlier, there's a stigma that Christian films aren't that good. We know that's not entirely true because there is some really good stuff out there. But
Yeah.
when I saw Vindication, I was like, this has elements of some things I'm a fan of, but it's also Christ centered. That's what got me excited and wanted, like, made me want to continue watching it for sure. And then I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but my next question is when you're 90 years old, do you want to still be writing and directing? If so, what type of stuff do you want to do at that age? Or would you rather be doing something else when you're 90 years old?
Yeah, probably not. I don't think that I'm that passionate about it as others are. They're just like, oh, they're creatives and they just have so much to tell. That's not me. I come from the IT, the tech background, and so that's just not, yeah, for me. I'll give you this is a little truth nugget that you don't hear talked about much that I'll share from my standpoint.
Okay.
So much effort and energy goes into creating these things. You do the script, the casting, the location scouting, the shooting, the editing, the music. You put it all together and pour so much into it, and you fall in love with it, and then you hate it, and then you're in love with it again, and you at the end you're somewhere in between. Just so much goes into it, and your meetings and arguments and battles and all that, and that happens, and then it comes out and people are excited about it for a day or two, and then they're like, when's the next one, what's next, what's coming next, and you're going, man, all that effort and the payoff is just people being entertained by it for a few days, maybe saying something about it, and then all it is what's next. And so to me, the way Jared is built, that work for the payoff doesn't exactly add up. And so that's kind of a struggle. And maybe all creatives go through that, but there's always build up and excitement. Maybe, on the first episode of a season, people are pumped and there's a lot
Mhm.
of talk and energy, but they get to like the fifth and sixth episode and they're just kind of in the groove now, just watching, okay, give me the next one, give me the next one, and that excitement has worn off and you're like, wait, hold on. That episode, we put a lot into that. You're
Right.
like, it needs the excitement that you had for the first episode. So all that to say that for people maybe who look at the glamours, and I've heard big time filmmakers as well, these 200 $300 million films, there's all this excitement and maybe it's for a couple weeks while it's in the theater, but then after that people move on. What's next? I'm ready for something new. And you're like, man, you poured years into that and hundreds of
Yeah.
millions of dollars, and it's exciting for a couple of weeks and then everybody's moving on and it's old news then.
Yeah. And man, that's a good point. That's something that we don't think about, or the average person doesn't think about. But so much of the business is, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is going to sound kind of funny, but this was several years ago, but I was on a film set. I don't know. This is probably like excuse me, mid 2000s, like 2006, seven, somewhere in there. And somebody said something about Robert De Niro, which in my opinion, is one of the greatest actors of all time. And somebody on the crew was like, I mean, he used to be a great actor. And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean he used to be? And they were like, well, I mean, like back when Raging Bull, that was like 1980. Like, what's he done since then? And I said, you think he's not a great actor now just because he didn't do Raging Bull this year? Like, you think he became, how would he suddenly become not a great actor?
Right, right.
And we didn't like get into an argument. I just kind of was laughing, but I was like, really? We were talking about Robert De Niro, and you're saying like he used to be good, but that's sort of the mentality you look at. Even guys like Woody Allen, Scorsese. Everybody's always like, well, what have they done lately? How many awards have they won lately? Or what was their last box office thing? And sometimes the art and all the work and everything you talked about, people maybe don't appreciate all the time and all the passion and everything that was put in and all the meeting schedules and deadlines and wrangling all these pieces together. People just want to say, "Oh yeah, but you were better in Raging Bull."
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting dichotomy
Now,
that
something I
we
do
go
like about
through.
series is I feel like ours has had a much longer shelf life because we are making a season four and it's coming out. People are going back and watching season one and episode one, work that we did over a decade or almost a decade ago. New people are watching it for the very first time, and so it still has that excitement, Or I'm hearing people talk about things from season one that I'm like, well, we did that 6, 7 years ago. People are still talking about it, still excited about it
Yeah,
because, and the only reason that's happening though is because it's a series and because we have a new season coming out. People are talking about the new season. It's forcing others to go back and watch the old stuff. With a movie, unless it's a trilogy or a series or whatever, a movie comes out, it doesn't typically get that second life of people going back and watching it because
that's
why?
true.
Because it's you've mentioned I don't know, I'm not picking on them. I love the movie too, but I'm Not Ashamed, right? Uh,
Yeah,
really, really good movie when it came out. People are talking about it, they're watching it, it's going on. I haven't heard anybody besides you mention it in the last 5, 6, 7 years. I'm like, that's a good movie. Nobody goes back
yeah.
and watches it. Nothing brings it back to life. It just happened. It had a short period of time and then it's gone. So
It had its shelf life, and that was it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's over with, and it's hard to think of anything that would bring it back into the discussion. But with a series, when a new season comes out, it brings back some of that older stuff to get talked about more. And so that's you'd mentioned, oh, do you ever want to do features? And I'm kind of like, well, I like the series space because of this. It
yeah.
has that longer shelf life, and the
Okay.
tail seems to be a bit longer. Whereas you go do a movie, people are excited about it for a little bit of time, and then it's old news. They don't want to go back and rewatch the same movie unless it's one of the few
Yeah,
unicorns, the classics that just happen to pop up that
right.
everyone loves it for ages and ages. But for every one of those, there's 5,000 other movies that were made that were good for one watch and then go away.
For every Wizard of Oz, Citizen Kane, and The Godfather, there's a 100,000 movies that nobody watches twice. So
Exactly.
yeah,
There you go.
that
Yeah,
that's a
great point.
that's a very very valid point. Well, unless you had any other questions or surprise announcements, I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping up today. Anything else you wanna leave the audience with?
No, I appreciate the conversation. I think I've shared some things that typically don't get talked about or brought up in interviews. So this should have
Hmm.
some value for audiences that they're new things if they're Vindication fans that haven't been talked
Yeah,
about before.
absolutely. Well, man, it's very much a pleasure. We've been trying to talk about scheduling. Jared and I have been trying to schedule this interview for at least a few months. And like I said, we met a few years ago and stayed in touch, but we've been trying to get a schedule worked out for him today. So thankfully that things lined up for us. I'm gonna pray real quick and just kind of pray for you and everything that's going on in your life, and then we'll land the plane. All
All right.
right. Heavenly Father, thank you again for this time that we had together today, God, and for allowing Jared and I to cross paths. I just pray that you'll continue to bless everything that he's doing, Lord, and that your hand will be at work with what he's doing in his future, Lord, and that you'll just have him just continue to draw him to you by your Spirit and for him to walk the path that you are carving out for him. In Jesus' name, I pray these things. Amen.
Amen.
I will thank you to all of you that are watching. I hope y'all did like the episode. If you did, please show that by clicking the like button. And if you've not already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really will enable me to continue to bring you this type of content as well as many other types of content. So for Jarod O'Flaherty, I didn't even mention this. We're two Jareds and our names are not spelled exactly the same.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, does anyone ever misspell your name with an O instead of an E?
Only about 7,058 times per year.
Oh, okay, because they always misspell mine with an E instead of an
They,
O. So I'm like, does it ever happen the other direction?
oh, constantly. People spell
Okay.
mine with an O or two R's in a O. I even saw Jyrrid one time.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, Gyrorid? Like, y'all are just complicating it to a completely unnecessary level here.
Yeah,
But
J-Rid.
I was like, it's not even Jared at this point. You're just making up combinations of letters to throw together and call it
Yep.
something.
Yep.
But anyway, man, thanks for stopping by. Great to have you here. And man, wish you the best and everything that you do. So for Jarod O'Flaherty, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. Thank you all for stopping by. I hope you have a great week. And I hope I see you again real soon. Now, Jared, have you always been a Frosted Flakes fan or do you prefer Fruit Loops?
I would take Fruit Loops instead of Frosted Flakes.
You take Fruit Loops over Frosted Flakes any day of the week?
Yep.
Okay, cool.